You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Hey, good morning, 8:06. Nice to have you back here up north on a Wednesday morning, November 26th. Parker Olson producing things down in Madison Studio A2. Earl Ingram standing by in Milwaukee to tell us about the What's Going On podcast. And later, we're going to be talking less than a half hour from now with Tom Nelson, the Outagamie County executive. Remember, we talked to him about the Edmund Fitzgerald and the book that he wrote. And the book encompassed not just the Edmund Fitzgerald, but shipbuilding overall in this country and how far it has fallen and how that's a problem, not just for jobs, not just for commerce, but for national defense. Now comes word that the Secretary of the Navy is ending the construction of a particular class of Navy frigates, which have been plagued by delays and cost overruns, but by canceling it outright, is that going to be a step backward? Or is that a case of one step backward, two steps forward, if it's replaced with something better? Tom Nelson has studied some of this, and so he'll talk to us about it coming up at 8:35. But first, I wanted to pass along from the mailbag here from Jim in Brookfield. And he's got here, let me scroll back up to it. There it is. Oh, Casablanca. Yeah, this is for you, Parker. We were talking about old-timey movies. And this is the anniversary of Casablanca coming out 83 years ago. And Jim writes, yes, Casablanca is timeless, classic lines. Just yesterday, a list of the 100 best comedies came out where scenes of Naked Gun were shown. Leslie Nielsen was parodying lines from Casablanca in that. I remember that well. He also said, my wife and I will be taking a transatlantic cruise next week with a stop in Casablanca. Oh, cool. We made reservations at Rick's Cafe months ago. Parker, please add the movie to your list, Jim in Brookfield. Whom I will add, we got to have some Culver's ice cream together. Culver's, custard, yogurt, whatever it is. We had dessert at Culver's yesterday as he was passing through town so that I could report back to Dr. Lyerly on his own knee replacement. He and Kristen both are comparing notes on knee replacement. But it was great to catch up with Jim. Thank you very much. Awesome. Yeah. And so, thanks for the affirmation on Casablanca. Yeah. It needs to be on everybody's list. Let's turn to Earl Ingram now. You can get the What's Going On podcast with Earl Ingram by heading over to civicmedia.us, clicking on shows, and you'll see Earl's right there. And Earl joins us for, let's talk a little turkey first because we got Thanksgiving coming up. Earl, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning to you, Pat. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Yeah, thank you. You are a turkey fryer, it turns out.
Well, I've been kind of messing around with frying turkeys for, 15, 18, 20 years.
Wow.
And I used to do it outside with propane, and that's kind of like the Model T Ford, still using that, and people don't realize, and you used to have so much trouble with it once you put it outside, and you couldn't put it in the garage, you had to put it out in the elements. And when the wind would blow on the fire and the propane coming through, it would kick the heat up really, really high, and you couldn't control the heat. And so a lot of times you would burn the skin on the turkey and kind of ruin it. So it was always hit and miss. At least 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago now, Butterball created an electric fryer. And so you can just plug it into your outlet in the kitchen, and it's perfect. I mean, it doesn't. Peanut oil burns at 376 degrees. It keeps it at 375, the optimum temperature, and so you can't go wrong. And you can walk away and do whatever it is you have to do.
Honest to God, Earl, I feel like I have lived on a desert island. That you mentioned, and I'm looking up like it really indoor turkey fryers, and I'm looking at all of these things that have been. And where have I missed this? This is outstanding. These electric turkey fryer roasters that are available out there, and that's so. How many turkeys are you making up?
Well, I'm only doing 2 today. There have been times that I've done as many as 6 or 7 on
Wow.
Thanksgiving Day.
Okay.
And really the key to it is what I do with it is, I inject it. I inject it with fresh basil, butter, orange juice, different spices. You inject it all throughout the bird, and then the spice that you add to that injection, and the white meat that's generally dry is moist, and it's got all this flavor. So, I mean, when I was a little younger and a little more energetic, I would do it. Everybody would ask me, and I would do it for them. So,
Wow.
gotten to the point, and they make them at smaller. You can get them where there's 12 pounds, 14 pounds, all the way up to 22 pounds, 24 pounds.
I have been telling people for years and years that the single best turkey I ever had was the one time that it was, deep fried. But again, we're going back almost 20 years when I was at somebody's house, and that's how they made it. And I've never had it since. And now I have a funny feeling that starting next year, it's going to be nothing but that based on everything that you're telling me. This sounds amazing.
Oh man, they're the best turkeys you'll find because it's succulent, right? I mean, I don't know if you knew it, but I mean, I cook, man. I do a lot of cooking.
Clearly, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting out of my element here, but I mean, could you, if you get the one for like a 12-pound turkey, could you conceivably do that with like a chicken as well? Or is
Absolutely.
it just...
It's not just for turkeys. It's anything that you fry. If you fry fish and you don't want to fry it with the regular oil, use the peanut oil, which is the lightest oil. It's the best for you. And anything that you fry, you can fry in these fryers.
I mean, I don't know what else to say. My mind is blown. I have learned all this. All right, well, let's get to the show itself, because you've got the What's Going On podcast. Find it over at civicmedia.us, and some of the things that you are working on for the show. Some of them that are coming up, and some that you've done. I know most recently, last week we talked about Sandy Williams being in, and everything that you talked about there. Since that time on the rundown, we've got certainly Sean Fettiplace from Main Street Alliance has been on. Dr. Robert Craig from Citizen Action has been on. And you've got a couple of others that are coming up dealing with everything from, Palestinians to heart disease. You're just covering all the bases lately here.
Well, Janan Najib is a world-renowned woman who created the Milwaukee Muslims Women's Center. She's been on major news outlets, and had her on to talk about how Palestinians are perceived in this nation, and how Muslims are perceived. It was a great podcast. It was a great conversation. Learned an awful lot about a woman who has been in America for the majority of her life. She came to America at the age of 3, and she's probably in her 60s, but she is a woman who goes all over this place and all over talking about Muslim women and Muslims in general, the misunderstanding that we have in this nation on Muslims, especially Muslims who are citizens. Great podcast. Sandy Williams and I had a conversation about insurance, health insurance, and why we are at this crossroads. Pat, I know your wife is a doctor, but why is this healthcare such a major issue in this country? And it's only going to get worse. And what do we think is happening? Why is it that American people, all over the world, people are able to deal with healthcare and issues? In China, clearly 1.3 billion people, and they can figure it out. Why can't we figure it out in this country, Pat? Why is it that we think that the American people were born and raised in this nation? When I was a young person, I had insurance. My father worked in the industry, So I always had insurance. Then I worked in industry. I had insurance all my life. And then I wound up with Medicare. So I've had insurance all of my life, Pat. I can't even begin to imagine why we think it's okay for the American people not to be covered with insurance.
Right. And we tie it to work. We
Yes.
tie it to work, which is such an outdated model. For folks who don't know, health insurance really got tied to your employment in World War II because of the labor shortage. It was so tough to attract workers, and pay rates were constricted. Of course, it was wartime, and so there were government controls on wages. So employers were like, well, we can offer health insurance instead as an enticement, which was fine for that era and for the boom, the industrial boom after that. But in this day and age, when nobody works at a job for 40 years and gets a gold watch anymore, people are moving from job to job. And so they might get covered, they might not get covered. This is a model that is just crazy broken. And I can't believe we still have politicians with no interest in fixing it.
You know, Pat, it's so erroneous in the way we approach this. So if people don't have health insurance and they go to the emergency room, let me say this to you. About a couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I wound up going to the emergency. I was feeling really not good. Mm-hmm. I got there at 8 a.m. in the morning, Pat. I didn't leave until 6 p.m. They gave me every test known to man at the emergency room because they knew I had Medicare. They didn't have to run all those tests. And after they were done, they said, you checked out, go see your doctor. But when it's the way it's configured, Pat, it has to be changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we do have problems on both sides of the equation. We definitely have underutilization because people don't have insurance and so they don't get things taken care of right away. And then we do have overutilization where people do run more tests than necessary, in part because they don't want to get sued. So they feel like they've got to do all this. But somewhere in there is that sweet spot. But you got to have politicians who are interested in crafting good policy rather than just winning the next election.
I mean, what are they waiting on? Yeah. It's not going away, Pat. It's getting worse every day, right? Okay. It's getting worse every day. And I'm fortunate because my generation, we were able to live at a time when we didn't have to worry about that. But all the generations after us, my goodness, I don't know what's going to happen.
No, I have the toughest time with that. And in all areas, I mean, we talk a lot here on this show about rural medicine and the hospitals and the clinics that are closing up. But the same goes for our larger cities, especially the ones where places have moved out of central cities and gone out into suburbia, instead, leaving a healthcare desert there. There are real problems here. And I'm not telling you that nobody's saying there are easy answers. The only easy path is to do nothing or to play politics with it. And we got way too many folks like that in there. So I'm glad you're calling attention to this and so much more. It's all in the What's Going On with Earl Ingram podcast. To get it, head over to civicmedia.us. Click on shows. You'll see it there. All kinds of episodes. You can listen through the website or subscribe and listen at your leisure. Earl, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great meal. I know you're sloughing off with only 2 turkeys, but try to enjoy it anyway.
Well, the last thing I want to add is I love it must be your granddaughter, great-granddaughter, breaks over in 30 seconds.
Oh, that's Tony. One of Tony's kids just recorded that.
That's great, man.
How great is that? I love that. Best part of our commercial breaks. Thanks, Earl. We'll talk to you later. All right, take care. Yeah, absolutely. So folks hear that if they're watching us on social media. But for the rest of you, this is the Civic Media Radio Network. Tom Nelson coming up in 15 minutes.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
All right, first I've got to warn you, you're going to experience a case of deja vu if you tune in about this time tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Tomorrow we're going to have some Thanksgiving leftovers, some of our favorite conversations of the past several weeks. And then one more from over the summer. We talked to Outagamie County Executive Tom Nelson about his book about the Edmund Fitzgerald, because, of course, this month marks the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And he wrote a book called Wrecked, the Edmund Fitzgerald and the Sinking of the American Economy. You can get that book, by the way, at msupress.org for Michigan State University, msupress.org. But here's the thing. Tom's with us right now, too. So you're going to hear about the Edmund Fitzgerald more tomorrow if you're listening in, or just look us up through a podcast and listen to Tom that way. But I reached out to Tom this morning to see if he could join us, because there's so much more to his book than just the shipwreck of this great ore carrier. There's also a lot about shipbuilding in America and the way things have declined overall, only to find out yesterday that the Secretary of the Navy has decided to cancel further construction of the Constellation line of frigates, which are kind of the ships above a combat ship but smaller than a destroyer. The Constellation line has been plagued by cost overruns and multiple design changes, none of it the fault of the good people at Fincantieri Marinette Marine up in Marinette, but those are the folks that were going to be building these ships, and now they're not. And so I wanted to ask Tom about it. He was gracious enough to come in and talk about, what he's learned about shipbuilding in America and what we can learn from yesterday's news. Tom, good morning. Thanks for being here.
All right. Great to be on. Happy almost Thanksgiving.
Yeah, to you as well. So, look, I am, as you know, I am not one that's normally going to give the Trump administration the benefit of the doubt on something. And Senator Tammy Baldwin has some very sharp words to say about the Navy Secretary's decision to just outright cancel this whole line, because it's going to make us fall further behind China in their ability to build ships that can, dominate the seas that are out there. But having said that, I have to ask, and I'm jumping right into the meat of things here, is this in fact a step backwards for the Navy and for shipbuilding in the U.S., or is it possible that this is one step back, two steps forward if they make some good decisions going forward, or am I being too generous?
Yeah, I think that you're partially right. I think you're going down the right track, and this is definitely a step back. It's a step back and not two steps forward, because we simply don't have the demand on the civilian commercial shipbuilding side. Now, you mentioned President Trump. He had talked about a few months ago about how he was trying to get a South Korean shipbuilding company to come to the U.S., I think specifically California. And this had something to do with the tariffs, or it had something to do with the latest Epstein bombshell. So it's not clear where this is going. I haven't really heard much from this. But what happened with Fincantieri is the Constellation class goes back to the Freedom class of the LCS, which was the littoral combat ship. That first ship was birthed back in 2004, 21 years ago, when Fincantieri Marine was still Marinette Marine and still part of the old Manitowoc Shipbuilding Company that had merged with a couple of companies in Sturgeon Bay. So they have had, the Navy, has oversight, and they've had over 21 years to inspect these ships, to work with the builders, more significantly, the designers. And that's the problem here. But what happens in Marinette, they're the ones who build this. They're not the ones who design it. That falls at the doorstep of Lockheed and specifically Rolls-Royce. And Rolls-Royce was the company that designed and built the engines. And that really is the underlying problem here. There were a lot of problems with the littoral combat ships. There are, of course, additional issues here with the Constellation, but as you suggest, right, the workers are going to bear the brunt, because the people who are supposed to do their job, not them, they didn't do it. And so they're going to suffer. But this is a good example. This is a great example of how we have capacity right here in Wisconsin. We have history, because this goes back to Marinette Shipbuilding. Marinette Marine, which goes back to Manitowoc Shipbuilding. Manitowoc Shipbuilding constructed 29 submarines in World War II. So our history, workforce shed, capacity infrastructure goes back decades. This is a great example how if the Navy, the military, backs out of a submarine or a ship construction class, that this workforce can easily fold into commercial construction, but we've given up on that.
Yeah, and it's something that when I mentioned Senator Tammy Baldwin being unhappy, among the things that she says in her statement is that the Secretary of the Navy made promises to send other shipbuilding work to Wisconsin to stabilize the workforce, but promises aren't good enough. I call on the administration to immediately share its shipbuilding action plan for supporting Wisconsin workers. And that ties into what you've talked about, again, for the entire nation, not just what's happening in Marinette, is that we have over decades, again, this is not a recent thing, over decades, we have allowed our shipbuilding capacity to shrink to a fraction of what it once was. And people might say, well, we're not at war. Why would we need so much shipbuilding? But there's a real danger when you're outsourcing all of that to other countries.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a great opportunity. We are going to continue to have these kind of opportunities. And I think what Senator Baldwin pointed out is this is why not only is it not one step backward, two steps forward, but it's one step backward. And what Senator Baldwin was advocating for is to kind of stabilize this, one step back and one step forward. But the military, just like Wisconsinites and specifically Fincantieri Marine and the workforce, we have an interest in a stable shipbuilding industry because for us, it's of course jobs, and this is a big part of economic development in Northeast Wisconsin, specifically the UP, Northeast Wisconsin, Marinette, Green Bay. But at the same time, too, the military sooner or later is going to need Marinette Marine, Fincantieri Marine to build a ship. And so we have to make sure that we have these established companies, a workforce, so that when it is needed, that they're there. And if they pull these contracts out, if they don't do their job, which is to make sure that these ships are up to spec and it's what they need, then this is going to be bad, of course, for Fincantieri Marine, for the workers in Marinette, but also for the U.S. Navy.
We're talking to Tom Nelson, who's written a book about the Edmund Fitzgerald, but also about just shipbuilding in the U.S. overall, both military and commercial. And you bring up the workforce, and I'm reminded of an Associated Press story from just over a year ago out of Marinette and the labor shortage that is there. It is a real struggle to find and then keep people, the bonuses that have to be paid out, because again, this is not something, pun intended, you can't turn an aircraft carrier on a dime.
Right,
And
exactly.
same goes with the workforce there. So, the point is well taken that, what else is the military going to do to not let things continue to stall out? Let me ask though, apart from the military, when we talk about, commercial, all the things that bring, goods to and from our shores, is this a case where the military, meaning the government, the public sector, should be leading the way? In other words, if we have a healthy shipbuilding sector for the military, then commercial traffic will naturally follow right along? Or should we be doing more to build up our commercial shipbuilding needs regardless of what the military does?
Yeah, we have to do both. I mean, the objective here, and I hope it would be the objective, is to expand shipbuilding beyond military and to commercial, which is going to have a direct benefit not just on American industry, across the board, all kinds of industries, but also Wisconsin specifically. We need to have this congruent effort where we are maintaining the workforce, that we are continuing to meet the needs of the U.S. Navy, because the U.S. Navy is going to continue to need ships. And really, Marinette Marine is one of the few here in the Midwest. So they're going to need us. But at the same time, too, the Trump administration needs to follow through on what they said they were going to do and to bring this South Korean ship manufacturer to the U.S. So they need to do that. They need to follow through on that. So on one hand, you have the administration that kind of gets this. What they have to do is to really understand it, follow through, execute on this, and bring this Korean company. I mean, in the case of Fincantieri, this is an Italian company. So they want to be able to, in the case of South Korea, if they're serious about building ships globally, which they are, it's a pretty big company, or the one that they're looking at, that they're going to have a North American presence. So they need to get on that. They need to make this thing happen. And then I can tell you right now, knowing Senator Baldwin, she's going to be at the head of the line to get this company to get these jobs here in Wisconsin.
Oh, she most certainly is. And in fact, in late August, when the Trump administration announced this shipbuilding deal with South Korea, she made a lot of those points right from the get-go to make sure that this does include an American presence and it doesn't just become an excuse to outsource more shipbuilding work to South Korea. In the 2 minutes or so I got left here, Tom, let's follow up on the book about the Edmund Fitzgerald. I mean, there were things that you had to say in there about the quality of the shipbuilding and the maintenance. And since we talked about it back in August, what kind of reaction did you get? Any pushback? Did you get affirmation to some of the things in the book?
I would say, and this is worth retelling, probably the most rewarding conversation I had validating the research, my thesis, came, not from a book review, came not from an interview, but came from a family member of one of the fallen crew members. And this family member, I don't want to go too far into it because they want to be, they just don't want to be so public on this. But this crew member, this family member, I met them for dinner because they want to talk more about that. And they brought my book along. And she said, I want you to know something. This book right here, this is my Bible. Because this has answered so many questions that I've had over the years. And I wish somebody had written this kind of book 50 years ago. So, doing a book project is pretty long, complicated, but I'll tell you what, that was worth every minute I spent on this project.
Well, and you took great pains to say this takes nothing away from the men who are on board that night, but that because of everything from just the lore to the song to everything else, there's a lot of romance, if you will, in there, romanticizing this, and not so much the accountability that maybe should have taken place back then. And that's really, it sounds to me like the point you were trying to make is there should still be some recognition that there should be some accountability.
That's exactly right. And I think that we've been kind of chasing our tails for the last 50 years where we're focused on these proximate causes, whether it's the hatches running around the shoal, whether it's the Three Sisters waves. Those are proximate causes. That's what happens in the 15th round of this boxing match. I'm interested in the first 14 rounds. In the first 14 rounds speaks to the bad bosses that did not keep the ship in good shape, did not maintain it, who were checked out, and let the Fitzgerald fall apart so that when it hit a storm like that, it sank, and the other three ships did not.
Yeah. Tom Nelson, Outagamie County Executive, author of Wrecked, the Edmund Fitzgerald and the Sinking of the American Economy. You can get it at msupress.org. Tom, thank you very much for coming in on short notice and telling us all about this. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
You too. Good to be back on.
All right. Thank you very much. When we come back, we'll have some final news and notes from here on Lake Wissota on a Wednesday morning right after this. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The searchers all say they'd have made whitefish.
Welcome back. It is 7:35 on a Monday morning. It's November 24th. I'm Pat Kreitlow here in Chippewa Falls. You can sign up for our newsletters at upnorthnewswi.com. We have a weekday edition that Ellie Bordeaux puts together, chock full of Wisconsin features. Today, for example, one of the stories is about a dozen different holiday parades around Wisconsin with a Christmas and holiday theme that you might like to attend. There's also our Sunday morning newsletter that I put together with a focus on politics, especially Wisconsin politics. It also includes our question of the week. And this week's question that we'll get into more tomorrow deals with artificial intelligence. Where are you on AI in terms of optimism or pessimism? And I give a range of examples of where you might be on the future of AI. And a lot of great responses are already coming in. So we'll talk a bit about the future of AI tomorrow. But that's our question of the week. Sign up for the newsletter, Sunday Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, over at upnorthnewswi.com/mornings. Again, upnorthnewswi.com/mornings. Let's welcome in Abigail Sweats from Fair, Wisconsin, as we do on our Movement Mondays, talking to groups that look to preserve freedom, dignity, democracy, all the things that we used to take for granted in this country, but realize have to be fought for. Abigail knows these are fights that go on every single day, especially for our friends, neighbors, and loved ones in the LGBTQ community. Abigail, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on today. And I know that my mother is about to forward me the newsletter you were just talking about. She forwards it to me pretty much every day. I should really start subscribing.
They should. Although I love the forwards, and we encourage everybody to do that. By all means, forward away. That's wonderful. Abigail, we're mostly just learning more about Fair Wisconsin today. So let's just start some of us have known about or been allies of the group for many, many years. But for folks that this is a whole new introduction, tell us about Fair Wisconsin.
Of course. So Fair Wisconsin, the organization I lead, is Wisconsin's only statewide LGBTQ plus civil rights and political advocacy organization. So that means we do a lot. A lot of it is in the realm of educating the public about what it means to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community when it comes to the issues we truly care about, as opposed to other people deciding we are issues. Really lifting the humanity of our own community. We also do a lot of work in the electoral space, getting out the vote. And when it gets closer to election time, we do have political action committees and we will be endorsing. So we do a wide range of work. Right now, we are in our legislative session. And so we've been doing a lot of work at the Capitol as well.
I love the notion of, getting people to focus on the issues instead of being the issue, because that really gets to the heart of part of the more divisive sector of our politics is to, make scapegoats out of people or turn attention to them in negative ways. And we have a right wing in this country that clearly, instead of tackling the issues, wants to create an issue. And you're kind of responsible for pushing back on that.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to realize that what we saw during the campaigns in November and then again in the spring in 2025 in our own state Supreme Court election was a lot of people running for office trying to make our community an issue, and specifically with the really vicious anti-trans campaign attack ads we saw. And now that some of the people who ran those are now in power, not all of them won. Those who did won, the research shows that is not why they won. People did not vote for those ugly campaign attack ads. People actually said, including Republicans, the majority of them, that they found them mean-spirited. And yet the people who are in power who ran them seem to be running with this idea that they want to turn that hateful rhetoric into hateful policy. And so, we've been seeing these attacks at the federal and even state level against our trans community. This federal administration put out an anti-trans executive order on day one, and has taken many, many more anti-trans actions in the weeks and months since. And then, of course, also more than a few politicians in our own state are trying to say and do things that direct policies that are just outright attacks on trans people's and specifically trans youth's ability to live authentically and publicly. And it's something that we have got to stop.
It just felt like, we're talking to Abigail Swetch, by the way, from Fair Wisconsin. It just feels like, the political far right is floundering at whatever they can grab next, because it was being against civil rights. It was against equal rights for women. It was just, gay rights overall back in the day. And now, it's that subset of our trans community. And again, trying to raise, fear. And it really seems to be stoking fear more than anything else. Is that a lack of familiarity with who their friends, neighbors, loved ones might be in the trans community, or does that not matter? They were going to be against whatever helped them gain political traction anyway.
I think you might want to ask them that question, because I'm not sure I have a great answer, since I would love it if they would just stop. But yeah. I do think it's important for us to remember that the trans community is very small. We're talking probably 1% of the population. And so it is an easy and I would say cowardly choice for people to use a very small community as a scapegoat, as a wedge, as an issue, when we are in fact, of course, talking about people whose humanity we should be respecting. And so whatever their reason, it's wrong and it needs to stop. And I think the rest of us as a community, both the LGBTQ plus community writ large and our allies and those who just want to learn more, I'm really seeing people stand up and really show up for our trans community in a way that is really inspiring and shouldn't have to happen, But since it does have to happen, we are meeting the moment. And I think that's something that we should realize.
Right. And that's exactly why we have groups like Fair Wisconsin, which you can find at fairwisconsin.com or on Facebook. Search for Fair Wisconsin. And Abigail Sweats, the executive director, is with us right now. And that's what I wanted to get into next, is this whole notion of standing up and pushing back rather than trying to retreat, trying to be invisible so that they don't attack us again. And, people often say to progressives, to Democratic politicians, why are you guys always talking about, the LGBTQ, agenda, et cetera? And my answer has always been, we're not leading with it. But we're not going to stay quiet in the face of bigotry. We're not going to stay quiet in the face of attacks. So they know, the political right, that if they just attack and bully, the trans community, everybody in LGBTQ and their supporters, they know that people are going to want to stand up and respond and can then be accused of, well, there you go, leading with that agenda again. It's a weird little quandary we find ourselves in, but I don't think the right answer is to simply let all those attacks go unanswered.
I agree. It's a time for solidarity, right? It is a very scary time. And I think when we talk about being visible and standing up, first of all, we have to recognize that transgender Wisconsinites, even trans kids, have been perpetually put in the position of having to defend their own lives and their own humanity. And it is time for all of the rest of us to really show up for their rights, especially in this scary time right now where it really might not be as safe for people to be defending their own rights and their own humanity, which of course we have to honor and respect and lift the voices and also not make them do it alone. So I think part of that is realizing that this administration is going after some of our most vulnerable neighbors because they think they can get away with it and because it lays groundwork. So we have to stop it now. We have to stop it because our trans loved ones deserve our support and the right to thrive. And we also have to stop it because no one is safe for future attacks if we don't stop this now. And it's all about looking for connections within and across communities, realizing we're all in this together. We, as the LGBTQ plus sort of broad umbrella community, there is no queer liberation for LGBT people without also liberation for trans people, but also within and across communities. Of course, we are seeing such vicious attacks against our immigrant communities, against our BIPOC communities. We are all together here. There are queer and trans people who are immigrants, and there are queer and trans people of color who also all need this solidarity and this support.
Abigail Sweats is with us, the executive director of Fair Wisconsin. In talking about minors, especially, and when we're talking about transgender issues, we often hear, of course, about the bullying and the political bullying that comes up. So let's turn that around. Let's be proactive. And let's say, because I think a lot of voters want to know, rather than hearing the attacks and everything, what is in the mindset of you, Fair Wisconsin, the LGBTQ community, what is the best case scenario? What is the best way forward for, especially, let's say, parents with a child who is struggling with gender issues? Where is it that you feel like we all should be? Because one person's gender affirming care is another person's, stuff I don't even want to say because it's just so far ridiculous, but they think it's what's happening. Where is the right ground if you could make that happen?
Sure. So it's sort of, I would end the sentence with one person's gender affirming care is another person's lies they've been told. And so it's important that we really lift the truth when we're talking about things like the health, medically necessary, age appropriate, highly individualized, life affirming healthcare that our trans youth and trans adults need. And so that's one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing is staying well informed and staying informed in a way that we can meet others where they're at, which is often a place of either dis, or just no information so that we can move them along. I'm a former middle school teacher who knows very well that you cannot teach a kid if you don't meet them where they're at in order to grow them beyond where they're at. And so that can be really hard, of course. But I think there are a few things we can use in our toolbox. And I know many of us are about to be around Thanksgiving tables with people who might not always see eye to eye with us. And I think a few things that to keep in mind with those conversations are leading with love. both for the person that you are speaking to, but especially for the people we are talking about. Our trans kids, our trans Wisconsinites deserve so much love and support right now. Just a wraparound hug as we support their rights. Another thing to keep in mind is when we're talking about gender affirming care, we're talking about the ability for a trans youth or a trans adult to live in a body that feels like home. I feel like that's a universal desire that a lot of us can understand. And if we can approach that with some love and that with some generosity of our own understanding of whether or not we've had that kind of struggle with a body image issue before, I feel like that's something a lot of people can sort of have an avenue into understanding. And that's something that I know has been helpful for me when I'm having conversations who just don't have with people who don't have an understanding. And the last thing I just say is making sure we're using loving language when we're talking about people. There's a lot of mis and disinformation and lies that are being spread on the other side where people are using words that are hateful or words that are just inaccurate. Trans people are not issues. Trans people are people. So we should always make sure we're leading with the human language when we're having these conversations.
Yeah, you've got fans out there like on Facebook. Walt here says, great to see Abby on your program as a former president of Fair Wisconsin back in the day, fighting for the B community and the acronym. I am glad of their fight for those in the minority of the larger community. And,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, a whole lot of people want these words of affirmation. They want to lead with love. Some feel like, well, there's more for me to learn first. And I feel like if we've been helpful in any way in this country, there's still a lot of ugliness out there, but I would like to think that there are more people than ever saying, you know what, before I pop off, I'm going to read about this a little bit more.
Right.
And not just take things at face value, especially some of the ridiculousness that we see in our politics these days. Abigail, I could go on and on. Let's continue this conversation again sometime. Abigail Sweats is the executive director of Fair Wisconsin. This was such a pleasure, Abigail. Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll look forward to that email I'm about to get from my mom.
There you go. Mom, she done good. So
Thank
good work
you.
out of you. All right, take care now. 7:48 right now, and coming up in our next hour, we're going to talk to our friends John and Gordy from our civic media station WMDX in Madison about our question of the day. How far do you go for your Thanksgiving travels? How far are your guests coming? 855-75-CIVIC is the number for calling or texting. And then at 8:35, we'll talk to author Laura Bird, her monthly visit with some book recommendations, this time with, of course, the accent on gratitude. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Hey, you don't need me to tell you that we are approaching the holiday season, and it's all about the gratitude, the giving back, the reflection. And it's not just about your life. There's ways that we can help that in the material that's on your reading table. And for that, we have one of our regular visits with our friend and author, Laura Ann Bird. Laura, nice to see you. Thank you for being here today. Oh, let me get your mic potted up there.
Let's try that again. Happy Thanksgiving week.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. My goodness, I can't believe we're coming up on that time already. But like I said, there's a lot we talk about throughout the course of the year. There's drama and there's conflict and everything else. And it's nice just to take a little time and focus more on the things we're thankful for in life.
Absolutely. I love Thanksgiving for that reason. I think it's a nice time to examine what we're really grateful for. And I know that everyone has different things that they appreciate, of course, but I wanted to come up with a fun and creative list to get us thinking outside the box about what brings joy, texture, and meaning to our lives. And of course, I have a book recommendation for each because that's why you invite me here.
That's right. And you do such a great job of it.
Thanks.
And again, so Laura's going to go through quite a few books. We'll put the titles and authors in our show notes over at civicmedia.us as well. So let's get into 8 different things we can be thankful for this holiday season. You want to start with friendship?
Yes. Well, we're talking best friendship.
Best friends.
Best,
I like
we're talking best friends here. And so I hope everybody has a best friend out there that they can be grateful for. The first book I have is called Maggie, or A Man and a Woman Walk into a Bar by Katie Yee. It's her debut novel. I know it's a very long and whimsical title, which is kind of funny because the book is neither of those things. But our unnamed narrator here is a young woman with 2 little kids, and she's just been told by her husband that he's leaving her for a woman named Maggie. At the same time, our unnamed narrator finds out that she has breast cancer, and she has to begin the hard work of getting healthy and repairing her imploded life. So I know it sounds heavy, but I promise that there is immense beauty, humor, and grace in this novel. And the reason I say that is because the author gives us Darlene, who is the best friend of our unnamed narrator. And Darlene, by far, is my favorite character of the book. She's funny and smart, and she saves the day again and again, accompanying the narrator to all of her doctor's appointments, making sure she's eating and drinking enough water and getting outside. And she alone gets her through this really dark time simply by being present. So I'd like to think that we all have a friend like Darlene in our lives, you know, that one person who will literally do anything for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of that is not, somebody doesn't set out trying to be the hero of somebody else's life. They just think they're doing the right thing for that person, maybe sometimes underestimating how heroic they're actually being.
Absolutely. You nailed it.
All right. Let's get to what else are we thankful for here?
I'm thankful for resilience. And the book I have here is called A Marriage at Sea, a true story of love, obsession, and shipwreck by Sophie Elmhurst. So this is the true story of Marilyn and Maurice, a couple from the UK. They got married back in 1963, despite being a really odd pair. Marilyn was ambitious and charismatic, and Maurice was sort of obsessive and awkward. But they both loved the idea of escaping. So they decided to quit their jobs, sell their house, build a boat, and sail away together, which is what they did in 1972. For nearly a year, things went swimmingly, pun intended, on their voyage through the Atlantic and then the Pacific until a whale literally knocked a hole in their boat and it sank. They climbed onto this tiny rubber raft, starving and exhausted, and they began their fight to survive in the wild ocean with very little hope of rescue. So they were alone together for weeks and then months. I don't want to tell you how long because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but they had to figure out how to stay alive and also get along in the face of such unthinkable stress. So this book is so great. It's both an adventure and a rather gutting love story, but I think at its core, it's a testament to our human resilience when everything seems utterly doomed.
So again, A Marriage at Sea by Sophie Elmhurst, for those who are thankful for resilience.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
I'm thankful for advances in healthcare. And so the book I have today is Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. If you recognize John Green's name, that's because he wrote the wildly successful novel The Fault in Our Stars, which was made into a movie. But here he has dedicated an entire nonfiction book to tuberculosis, also known, of course, as TB. It is so good and enlightening. If you've ever read any Victorian fiction before, Pat, you know there are always characters like wasting away from TB. They're usually beautiful young women, you know, coughing up blood into their white handkerchiefs. And that's certainly one portrait of TB. But according to John Green, there is so much more to know and understand about this disease that has killed 150 million people since the 1950s alone. So he serves on the board of directors for a global nonprofit called Partners in Health. So he's had this really up close look at how the disease is managed today and also how it unfortunately persists in certain parts of the world. So this book is barely 200 pages. It is fascinating, and it will have you asking some really big questions about what we as a society value when it comes to public health, vaccines, and the cost of drugs. At the very least, it will have you feeling exceedingly grateful for advances and research in healthcare when it comes to TB and other curable diseases.
Well, good. We spoke earlier in the program about being thankful for advances in things like clean air.
Yeah.
This is the anniversary of a day when 400 people died in New York City in 1966 just from the smog alone, and that we should be thankful for advances in clean air, clean water, and of course, and healthcare as well. So everything is tuberculosis by John Green. All right, what else are we thankful for?
We're going to talk about birds. I'm so thankful for birds. I mean, who isn't grateful for wildlife? So the book I have is Birds of the Great Lakes, How They Look and Sound, Where to Find Them, and How to Protect Them by Dexter Patterson. I just want to tell you that Dexter Patterson is hot right now. He is the co-founder of Wisconsin's BIPOC Birding Club, which is dedicated to making birding more accessible and inclusive for people of color. He has quite a following. So this is his book. It is a fun and accessible guide that will help you identify more than 100 commonly seen birds in our Great Lakes region. He also weaves in best practices and research around habitat sustainability and conservation so that we can all work together to make sure our birds will be around for years to come. I also want to throw out that this is great for new birders and also experienced birders. And I know listeners can't see it right now, but it's this tiny, sleek little book, so it fits right in your pocket for all your outdoor adventures.
Or a stocking or a little gift bag.
Yeah.
It's that perfect little stocking stuffer size.
Yeah.
And I actually am always on the outlook for some new thing to read to help me identify the birds that fly around Lake Wissota. So
there you go.
That's a great example.
Dexter Patterson.
By Dexter Patterson. What else are we thankful for?
I'm thankful for the dictionary.
Okay.
And this book is by Stefan Fatsis, and it's called Unabridged: The Thrill of and Threat to the Modern Dictionary. This book is so smart and fun, and it's perfect for anyone who appreciates words in general and also how new words are brought into mainstream consciousness. Words like selfie and doom scrolling. So first, the author tells the little-known history of how brothers George and Charles Merriam acquired Noah Webster's original American dictionary, and they reshaped the business of language forever. So the author, embedded as a lexicographer in training at Merriam-Webster, that of course means a person who compiles dictionaries. And from that experience, he tells us everything he learned. Things like how to write a good definition and also how words are weaponized. Words, of course, like woke and DEI. And he also looks at how AI and Google are a growing threat to our compendium of words. So this is a great fun book.
And by the way, a shout out to the people who actually have to come up with dictionary definitions, because what do we normally do? We just rattle off synonyms.
Yep.
It's like, well, that doesn't necessarily help.
Yep.
So, those are one of those underappreciated things, the lexicographer.
The lexicographer.
All right. Laura Ann Bird, author, is with us with some recommendations on books dealing with gratitude. What else are we grateful for here?
I am grateful for a sense of acceptance and belonging. And I know not everybody has that. But this book is called So Many Stars, An Oral History of Trans, Non-Binary, Genderqueer, and Two-Spirit People of Color by Caro D. Robertis. So the author interviewed 20 trans, non-binary, and queer elders of color, including artists, activists, and ordinary citizens, to find out how they live authentically and create safe and nurturing spaces for themselves and for their communities. So this book comes from hundreds of hours of these interviews, and it offers really profound snapshots of raising kids, coming out, making art, and even weathering the AIDS crisis. So the stories in this book feel really important and urgent to me, and I think that they're ultimately a celebration of finding belonging and acceptance against the odds.
Very nice. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's one I wasn't expecting this one to be on your list of things you're thankful for, Laura. Carbon. The book is called Carbon, the Book of Life by Paul Hawken. Okay, so work with me here. So as I've learned, carbon is the only element that animates the entirety of our living world. So it makes up just a tiny fraction of the Earth's composition, but our planet would be literally lifeless without it. At the same time, of course, carbon is maligned as the driver of climate change. But Paul Hawkins examines carbon in this really creative, refreshing way. Specifically, he looks at the flow of life through the lens of carbon and how it shapes plants, animals, insects, fungi, food, and farms. And he does it all in just 200 pages. I think he is a marvelous writer, and he weaves in
not just poetic language, but also like this intellectual rigor. And I love it when anyone can write about science in a way that's engaging and digestible for non-science people such as myself.
Nice. All right. I feel like my Christmas wish list is growing here. Last but not least, this one, there you go. Well, we're thankful for democracy.
Democracy, and we don't want to see it vanish, right? So I think everyone needs to read this book, How Books Can Save Democracy by Michael Fisher. So it's teeny tiny, it's barely 80 pages, but it's written by a humanities professor. So he has like major street cred here. So this book is a great way to understand the importance of literature and how it bolsters our democracy. So Michael Fisher, the author, believes that in a world consumed by polarization and hatred, it's easy for reading to fall to the wayside, which is actually one of the reasons I love being on this show, Pat, is you've given me this wonderful platform to talk about books and reading and to get people excited about cracking open new titles. So he believes that by reading, writing about, and discussing literature with diverse perspectives, we can embrace our differences rather than fear them. And of course, this leads to the empathy and collaborative spirit needed to sustain a democratic society. I do think it's kind of disappointing he doesn't call out certain leaders by name, but he does reference a lot of authors throughout history and how they've helped diagnose societal and democratic challenges. Authors like Charles Dickens, Zadie Smith, Alexis de Tocqueville, and Bishop Desmond Tutu. So you can plow through this tiny little book in one sitting, and it will give you so much to think about when you are finished with it.
It will, and I'm really thankful for this because my daughters are always asking, for Christmas gift ideas, and now I have several.
Oh,
that
you've
will
got
go
a
on
bunch.
there. All right, Laura Ann Bird, and lest you think we're going to wait too long, Laura Ann's going to be back with us real soon to talk about books that help us get through the winter blues for that season as well. Happy Thanksgiving, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. We'll wrap things up here. Final news and notes from Lake Wissota right after this on the Civic Media Radio Network.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.